always hot tea. Today, we're talking about a disagreement that extends beyond music and has been going on between 50 Cent and Rick Ross for almost 10 years. Rick Ross has always pretended to be too wealthy and powerful to care, but his own baby mama recently revealed some information that might change everything. It's worse than anyone anticipated, I promise. Nowadays, some claim that Rick Ross is not as strong as he appears to be and that he is constantly concerned about one opponent who refuses to leave. By flaunting his riches and influence, Rick Ross established his entire persona as a boss. Self-defense was not the only reason Ross decided to strike back. He'd appeared powerful enough to protect himself, but how did it start? You won't believe it, but it wasn't a business deal, a street fight, or even a diss tune. Indeed, it began with a single look. During the 2008 BET Awards, Rick Ross somehow came to the conclusion that 50 Cent was struggling with him, but 50 Cent was completely unaware of it. His later claim that he did not recall seeing him at the event was interpreted by Ross as an act of contempt. Not only can 507 Cent win feuds, but he can also crush his opponents, as we all know. From the moment Ross decided to initiate this dispute, 50 Cent acted like a chess master, ensuring Ross would never be able to move past what was about to happen. Let's discuss Ross's baby mother's recent revelation and the reason this said boss has been closely monitoring Ross ever since. At the height of his career, Rick Ross was living the life of a dominant rap artist with 2 platinum albums under his belt, a burgeoning Maybach music label, and a reputation as the biggest boss in hip-hop. However, following a single incident at the 2008 BET Awards, everything changed. One glance at 50 Cent was enough to change everything. Perhaps because of his inflated ego or paranoia, Ross persuaded himself that 50 Cent had a problem with him. Instead of disregarding his contempt, Ross took advantage of it to criticize one of the most vicious people in hip-hop, who was his. The first serious error at this point, things start to become insane. In subsequent interviews, 50 Cent publicly acknowledged that he did not even remember seeing Ross that evening, demonstrating his lack of concern. However, Ross took it personally and interpreted it as impolite conduct, which is when things began to go awry. But when 50 Cent decides to fight, he ruins everything instead of simply responding with a diss track and going on. He doesn't play checkers, he plays chess. Ross believed that by beginning a drama for entertainment, he could establish his brand and place his name next to one of the greatest rappers in the world, but he had no. Instead of just delivering a few words in an interview, Rick Ross got right to the point. His diss song, Mafia Music, was a personal statement rather than merely a performance. Ross notably called attention to the 2008 house fire, which was one of 50 Cent's darkest experiences and had the potential to be devastating at the time, the 1950s. His ex-girlfriend, Shenica Tompkins, who was also the mother of his child, accused 50 Cent of starting the fire that destroyed her house while 6 people were inside. The accusations persisted even though the authorities never proved that 50 Cent was at fault because Ross was fully aware of his conduct and wasn't just upsetting 50 Cent. Rather, he was targeting the most painful injury. Ross brought up actual suffering in an attempt to portray 50 Cent as a monster who will stop at nothing to silence his opponents. The fight turned serious as soon as Ross finished talking about the fire, though, because 50 Cent was not the type of person who would ignore such an attack. Ross continued to, in spite of his uncertainties about the future, because he felt assured and unstoppable. Rick Ross showed his unrelenting resolve by pretending to win the fight before it ever began. In interviews, he boasted about himself, implying that 50 Cent was outdated and that he was the new street king, but Ross overlooked something crucial. 50 Cent battles not just with words, but also with reputations. He intended to examine Rick Ross thoroughly, revealing all that Ross didn't want the world to know, rather than just putting out one garbage song and moving on. 50 Cent began investigating it and discovered something that changed everything. He wasn't just responding to the 50 Cent message, he was aiming for total devastation. Rick Ross's first action revealed who he really was. "My pal, I'm going to ruin your life. I'll ruin your life." Ross had a reputation for being a street leader who overcame confrontation, took chances, and 50 lived like a real kingpin despite having something that may ruin everything and prove it was a scam. Then, images of Rick Ross dressed like a jail officer began to circulate online, putting all that Ross had battled for in jeopardy. Began to proliferate everywhere. In reality, the person running the streets worked for the system, handling prison records instead of selling. To make sure that everyone was aware of the truth, 50 Cent released those images, mocked Ross in interviews, and called him out. He didn't leave it to the internet, though. They were horribly prevalent in memes, diss recordings, and social media posts. Because Ross's entire reputation as a street king was disintegrating, and he still needed more evidence, 50 Cent went to Tia Kemp, Ross's baby mama, who knew him better than anybody else. When they sat down, Tia was eager to chat. She claimed that because Rick Ross was renting cars, borrowing jewelry, and staying in opulent homes that weren't even his, he wasn't truly living like a king. She was extremely honest about her relationship with 50 Cent, revealing a whole new side of the once bossy man. If that wasn't awful enough, Tia wasn't holding back when she confirmed that Ross was a correctional officer. During this silence, Rick Ross was not present. That silence said it all, and there was nothing he could do. His so-called empire was built on illusions. To conceal the reality, the internet had already taken over when 50 Cent performed something that nobody believed was possible. The police could not reverse the damage. Every comment, meme, and Ricky joke that Ross made was undermining his reputation and making his brand the target of hip-hop musicians' derision. But if you believe 50, when Cent had finished thinking, he decided to take it a step farther. But this time, instead of damaging Ross's reputation, he made the mistake of personally embarrassing him by revealing a private tape about another of Ross's baby moms, Lastonia Leviston. Because of this badly done action, Ross might have laughed off the cop, Ricky. This was a scandal, but it was something. Lastonia filed a massive lawsuit against 50 Cent for emotional distress after she could take it no more. When all was said and done, he lost that lawsuit, and the thing that hurt him the most was his wallet. The court ordered him to pay $5 million for the first time during the conflict. Lost money. However, Rick Ross continued to release music, stay out of the controversy, and act as though it didn't truly bother him. Surprisingly, the audience also began to go over Officer Ricky's offensive comments. The financial impact was so severe that he had to file for bankruptcy. It was the one error that cost him a lot of money. Despite his reputation taking a knock, he remained strong, producing music, having fans, and creating an empire. By going live on Instagram, Tia Kemp surprised everyone by revealing that Rick Ross is still terrified of 50 Cent and why -50 Cent knows too much about Tia. Everyone thought the rivalry was over when happened. Didn't hold back when she exposed the dark facts that Rick Ross had been trying valiantly to hide. Then, just when it looked like things couldn't get any messier, old pictures from Tia's 2009 Smooth magazine cover shot came to light, rekindling the baby mother controversy in the entertainment business online. Although these images were quite different, it's nothing new. It was about the person behind the camera, who just so happened to be 50 Cent, as much as it was about Tia's sheer sparkles, flaming red heels, and delicately sparkling lace dress. Yes, the person directly in command of the entire 50C shoot was Rick Ross's fiercest adversary. In addition to assisting Tia in getting on the cover, he ensured Rick Ross knew who was accountable for her appearance. If the Smooth magazine title, "Where's the Beef?" wasn't enough to infuriate Ross, the real poison was the extremely petty 50 Cent, who was the issue's guest editor. These two continued to make fun of one another, even after it seemed like the drama had finally subsided, and the most recent episode has given the feud an entirely new meaning. After Big Meech was released from prison, he joined forces with Rick Ross. You can be certain that did not sit well with 50 Cent, who is the CEO. It felt like a betrayal to leave prison and immediately side with Rick Ross, the producer of the BNF-TV series that continued the Black Mafia family legacy while Big Meech was incarcerated. 50 Cent immediately hopped on Instagram and made a dubious post to ensure that everyone knew just how he felt. "I think I am Big Meech, huh?" 50 Cent made a straightforward and honest remark in response to a picture of a gigantic rat. The contempt was unparalleled, but it wasn't the worst aspect of the caption. 50 made it apparent that cutting off contact with one individual was a grave mistake on Meech's part. Tammy. Who is Tammy Sins? At this time, things start to become ridiculous, so I asked. Tammy handled crucial issues behind the scenes as Big Meech's business partner and assistant. The twist is that she allegedly turned on him and became an informant for the FBI just when it seemed like the drama might get much crazier. Rick Ross was the one who stepped right into the argument and laughed about how annoyed 50 was because me had taken a selfie with him. There has always been animosity between 50 Cent and Rick Ross, but if anyone loves ridiculing Ross as much as 50 does, it's his own baby mom, Tia Kemp, and this time she really went all out. New degree by accusing Rick Ross of attending those infamous freak-off parties. Tia dragged him into the Diddy scandal. Rather than merely hinting at it, Tia went ahead and told Rick Ross that he was involved in the same questionable situation that led to Diddy's federal trafficking charges. She made fun of him by claiming that Diddy tosses all these. She went farther than that, mocking Ross for abruptly becoming silent and calling him out for acting as though he was unaware of what was going on. But this was not the first time she had exposed him. Where is Rick Ross now? And why isn't he over there telling his pal Sean how much he loves him? Tia left-cropped Ross on Instagram for keeping quiet about Diddy's predicament. She made it apparent that Ross might not want to discuss it, but she wasn't going to ignore it. She merely stated, "You are really loud when it comes to rap beef, but now when things get serious, you have nothing to say." Tia demonstrated that she wasn't scared to use disparaging words by doing more than simply talking. Win it. As if things couldn't get any more bizarre, she further implied that Rick Ross was directly responsible for organizing hits on victims. She brazenly said that she would take action, sending federal officers to his home after declaring that he was guilty by association. Doorstep, but things just got worse. When Tia made her surprising disclosure, fans were shocked. She alluded to a murder and Miss Carol, implying that Ross was directly responsible for the disaster. In case you were wondering who Miss Carol was, here she is. Tia said that after leaving her mother's home, she was murdered and that her passing was. She was connected to Ross and his group, but she was more than that. When she referenced the man who was shot just in front of a black house, she was hinting at another connection to Ross's circle. She finally made her claims on stage and revealed truths Tia had kept hidden for a decade in the Kasha Please show. Back then, she began to reveal things that no one had anticipated. She claims that Rick Ross had 9 or 10 kids overall, which is a lot more than most people realize. He never discussed the others, and most people were only aware of the ones they could Google. She went on to reveal yet another surprise, one that according to her, kids seemed just was from a Russian woman and looked like Drake. She chuckled and questioned why Ross hadn't given the world to the youngster.